Hello, everyone. I am happy to be here tonight with some amazing folks I'm going to introduce you to in a moment or two. And we're talking about marketing and digital strategies for artists, for independent artists, for artists who maybe are working outside of a larger studio system or a larger entity, and how maybe you can strategize your marketing and some really cool tips and tricks. Matt Campagna and he is currently behind this camera. He and I led a workshop or organized a workshop in the summer in Toronto, and we had some people able to attend, but not everybody could attend, obviously, so we wanted to give you some of what we covered in that and give it out to you, interwebs, and everyone who might be interested in some of this information. So we're joined tonight by a growth marketing consultant and founder at FlowJo, Tiffany DaSilva.
Hello.
Welcome. Partner and Chief Operations Officer at Truly Inc., Carlos Pacheco.
Hey.
And market researcher and strategist and CEO at Truly Inc., Tara Hunt.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we're going to just chat. If things come up and you guys want to jump in, it's very informal. So,
Okay.
And if anyone is watching on Twitter and wants to jump in with a question, please feel free. Matt will relay those questions for us. And if you know anybody else who's interested and you can share and retweet, that would be awesome. So one of the you're gonna Tara's gonna do it right now.
I
totally
forgot.
Yeah.
I did too. I'm not sharing.
I'm
it.
getting like anxiety. Oh my god, where's my phone?
My arm's gone. We're also gonna probably put it up later on YouTube probably, so we'll share that link as well. So if you don't see us now.
Like Inception.
Yeah, right? Is it weird? Because it's like you're
It's like
watching
live
yourself.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
I know, it's weird. The internet. So a lot of what came up when we did our workshop was the concept of sort of your best customer, or for an artist, sometimes we consider that your best audience member. I think a lot of times, certainly I'll speak in media because I work in TV and film a lot, and in theater, that we tend to still look at things from like these very broad demographics. Like we'll be like women aged 18 to 36, and you're like, it's so broad, there's no chance of...
Or mothers.
Yeah,
Oh, wow,
yeah, right.
A lot of mothers.
Yeah, what does that mean, right? So I don't know, anyone can jump in. How do we go about determining who that best audience for us is, or that best customer? Like what's a good starting point anyway?
Well,
Cool.
this is your wheelhouse. This is like this is one of the biggest problems, I think, that whether you're a small business, even a large business, or an artist, independent artist, or you're producing a book or a piece of art, you put things out in the world and you think this is for everybody, and you don't want, and I think what people get stuck on is they don't want to limit themselves for their audience because they want to have like the most possibility. I guess it's like dating, right? Like I want to be able to have like a lot of possibility in order to attract buyers, and I don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
So that people have they have a very difficult time. But the problem with having that attitude in marketing, especially now, is there's so much noise out there, right? So and it's expensive. Like even though it's gotten cheaper to get in front of people, there's so much competition, and there are so many platforms and so many media out there that are trying to get in front of people that it is actually very expensive to get in front of people. So especially if you're small and you don't have a huge budget, it's really important to know exactly who you're talking to. And when we sit down to talk to anybody about who their best customer is, we have sort of like and this is pretty general, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty, but number one is, and it's very obvious, but it isn't at the same time, is they have a need or desire for what you're selling, whether they know it or not, really at that point. So somebody might actually be hacking what you're selling. So it was funny, we were talking with somebody the other day about how spreadsheets are used for everything. So they might be using a spreadsheet You've built the perfect tool to help solve something, but people are currently solving it with a spreadsheet.
Right.
They don't know necessarily they're looking for you, but you've built that perfect tool. But like knowing that about them, so they have a need or desire, and you just need to get in front of them and show them how your solution is better.
Right.
Number 2, and this is also obvious but not all obvious, is that they can pay. And they're willing to pay
Yeah.
for what you're selling. So in that one, this is the trap that people get in with couponing and stuff. We've worked with clients who are all like addicted to discounts and coupons. Look at how many people that we bring in through this. But the problem is, especially if you are doing like a subscription service, you could probably talk to this even more than me, or something that's like a recurring thing that, a lot of people will use a coupon but won't come back. So you're gonna have to pay to get another person to replace that person.
Right.
So it's better like for somebody who wants to pay full price in the first place because they really desire what you're selling. And number 3, and this is the part that isn't so intuitive, is that they talk to other people like them.
Right.
They are influential, maybe even to other people like them. And it doesn't, and I'm not talking about influencers in like, I have 100,000 followers or 1 million followers on Instagram or whatever. I'm talking about somebody who's trusted in their community, and it could be a small community like, well, tax accountants aren't a small community, but say like you're a small business, local accountant, and you're hanging out with other people who have that same, the same needs as you do. So if you can check off like yes on all of those lists, like definitively, that's going to be your best customer. So anybody you can think of, like, oh, this would be a great customer segment, we'll go down that list and test it against those things.
That's cool. That's a great way to move into that. And I know, I remember in your presentation, Tiffany, talking about how to, because as you were saying, it's noisy out there, so you deal a lot with how people can find you in that noise, which is so important. And you talked about sort of breaking down how many of those customers you really need, or how many people you need to reach to actually sustain yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, like when you think of looking at kind of that big target audience, women, I mean, okay, like there's, like, let's say 3 billion. Like we don't need that. Like, we literally need 1% of the 1% of the 1% or whatever. So I try to understand, like, if I were to get 100 true customers, what is that actually? How much money do I actually need to make? Start there, especially for musicians, because you're trying to, or musicians or artists, you're trying to just, let's pay your bills. Like, let's pay your bills and add some savings. Like, what does that actually mean in terms of how many customers you have based on the product that you have? So kind of starting from that point and figuring out how many customers is that? Because sometimes when we go into, even, like, I'll have people coming in and being like, I know that I have to get like 1 million followers on Twitter or the 10,000 followers on Instagram to get, I'm like, no, well, what if you just got like 100, but that paid for something that you're selling?
Right.
So first figuring out that. And what people, I don't think, realize is they don't kind of realize how they search for things anymore. So when they're going on Etsy, for example, I have this tool that allows me to see how people shop on Etsy. And they're so specific. They're like, I want a porcelain vase that is blue and white and whatever. What if you actually have a porcelain vase that's blue and white, and that's the title of the page that is on your website, and when people look that up, you are on that first page.
Right.
And instead of calling it the rosemary line, or like something that does not make any sense to what your product is. So it's really important to find the people who are looking for exactly what you're selling, or whether it's the actual product, like the product that the blue, the white, whatever, how you describe it, or if it's a cute mug with funny slogans. Sometimes people look up something like that, and that's how the customer is defining it.
Right.
So it's just finding those ways that people are describing your product and making sure that you create a page for it. I think the one thing in SEO that people forget is if you want to be found for something, you need a page for it. And
Right. Yeah.
It's so simple.
Not just an Instagram.
Yeah, because you wouldn't put like my target audience is women, so this is a woman page, and here's like 50 different products I can sell a woman.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's
right.
not how
No
it
one
works.
will find you ever.
You will never
yes.
come. Yeah. So it's really about figuring out, not only who the 100 customers are and finding a brand that suits them, but also how would someone describe your product, either through the customer's eyes or through what the product defined is, and make sure you create pages for that.
Right. Cool. Yeah. And so a thing that I found rang true for all three of you when we did these longer presentations was around this kind of specificity, was about understanding how the people you're targeting shop, how they speak, what they do in their lives. And I know, so Carlos, you work a lot with YouTube and YouTube pages and maximizing and optimizing YouTube. And I think this is an area where a lot of people, I know because in my field, in digital series or in streaming, people like to talk about YouTube as this, this place where you can post anything and it can go viral, and there's a very sort of vague idea of what YouTube is. And I know you talked a lot about the importance of keywords on YouTube. Can you speak a little bit to that, maybe?
Well, I think one of the things that I try to sort of like specify or talk about when I talk to creators, people who are trying to create content that is more narrative versus content that is more useful, is how the people are going to discover it, right? And unfortunately, the bad news is that anybody who's trying to build a web series from scratch has probably got the worst opportunity, the worst way to sort of like build an audience, because the only thing that you're going to build an audience on is your reputation, and there's no SEO that's gonna help you, and that side of things. And that's why when I try to sort of like tell creators who want to get into this space is like, what kind of content are you making that's going to help somebody, that's going to be about what somebody's searching for? What are they making? And that's why when we talk about formats for a platform, it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to make a web series about about a couple of girls growing up, right? And it's like nobody searches that. We're like, I want to, so
I want to videos
so,
of girls growing up.
That's right.
So it's like, when you're creating a series for YouTube, because again, this is one of the things that for us feels like old school, but it's like the number, what's the number one search engine in the world?
Google.
What's the second biggest search engine?
YouTube.
YouTube. They're both owned by the same company.
Right.
So search is a big thing on YouTube. So if you're making content that's searchable, that people are searching for, you'll have an edge versus somebody that's making content and nobody knows your brand. Whenever you're creating series, that's a completely new brand.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to get exposure for that is PR, paid ads, and all that sort of
Word
stuff.
of mouth.
Word of mouth and all that sort of stuff. So keywords and doing that research, that finding a trend that you can sort of like see that people are searching more and more for this type of like content or this type of information, and maybe using that data to build that series instead of coming to the platform and build it and they will come type of strategy. It doesn't really work on YouTube.
Yeah, that was very eye-opening for me. As I've spent time with you, I've learned a lot about my preconceptions about YouTube and about, how people look for things, and I don't think, for artists, a lot of the time you're so focused on the thing you're making and you're not thinking about how people will come, either because you've worked with companies who do that for you for a long time and you haven't had to do it, or you're working with funding bodies that don't know about this. I think in media we're a little bit behind in some respects.
But you have to think of like how a broadcaster or even like a streaming platform works, right? They have an ingrained audience. So all they have is a billboard, and like every day they'll put your show in front of other shows so that it gets exposure, and that's the growth that happens there. And if it hits the right audience, it'll grow faster and all that sort of stuff. And that's why, like, everybody talks about the first page, not the first page, but like the recommendations on Netflix, right? If you're not on the recommendation stuff, you're nowhere, right?
That's right.
So and you can't really, Netflix is not a search engine. Somebody's curating that. There's an algorithm curating that. And there's even more talk these days of like less about algorithms, more about people, and you know, certain platforms that are going to start bubbling up that are going to be more human curated and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's very different from YouTube.
Yeah, the old media though, like Carlos said, they had a corner on the market, and there were a finite number of distribution channels. That is no longer the case.
Yep.
You know, you go on YouTube, it's not a like channel like 1 to even 100, right? With
It's
like
millions.
Yeah.
Not even like I don't know how many million, tens of millions.
Well, when you think of like literally every person that has an account is a channel.
Yeah.
A channel.
Yeah,
You're getting into the billions. So
Yeah. So like, and that's just YouTube. There's also like Instagram, TV.
IGTV,
somebody watches IGTV. I don't.
Me neither,
Facebook
but yes.
has like channels, like every one of these different platforms. Twitter, even we're live streaming right now.
Right now.
So, and it's not only just watching video, people are reading. So there's multiple publications. The internet is an infinite number of choices. But you know, as Tiffany was saying, like people are going to seek out things that help them. Well, I love that, you know, I think we both talked about the jobs to be done. People are going to seek out information that helps them solve a job to be done. And so that's what Carlos is talking about too when it comes to like useful content that will answer something that they need to get done right now. But that could also, the job to be done could be like also connecting or feeling a little less lonely too, right?
Sure.
So it's not just about I don't know, unboxing videos or how-to videos or like tasty how to cook something kind of videos, but it's also there are videos that will do really well that are about emotionally connecting and telling stories and stuff, because people are looking for stories that reflect them and their culture and their experiences as well. But you need to, like, you don't want to call it like Gemma's story. Like it's not gonna like
no one's searching Gemma's story.
One of my favorite examples of that is like when you think about people that are older, kind of in the 50, 60, 70 range, you're not thinking that they're using YouTube. But there is this, we're talking about like recipes. There's a woman that does old Portuguese recipes that are well known from like the Azores. It's like very particular small island. And on YouTube. And her name's
That's
Leonor.
awesome.
Like
Awesome.
and what's crazy about this woman is like she's in her kitchen. It's the worst quality. It's like she's just, and she has like the kind of great accent. Like it's just it's so, it feels like home as soon as you watch it.
Yep.
And so my parents kind of got sucked into it pretty quick, and they like watch it, stream it, just for fun, like TV. They have it on their big screen that they watch it all day. But they'll be talking about it to someone else and like, oh, I've been watching these recipes on YouTube, and someone else who's like older, who are like maybe almost in their 70s, going, oh, I watch it, you know what? Oh yeah, I watch her all the time. I subscribe to her. I can't wait till I get it. And I'm like, what, to subscribe? Not only so someone came in looking for a recipe for, let's say, cornbread. They looked it up either in Portuguese or English, found it in the title. Saw it Azorian because everything is like from the Azores, so it's like a particular kind. Got sucked into the one video, maybe watched one or two. Now they've subscribed to this and they're watching, telling every single other person that they know. And this woman now has 1.8 million views on every single, and she's in her little kitchen in Bermuda. She is, and not changing the quality of it.
Why would she?
And her son sometimes does some videos. She sometimes has her granddaughter in there. But like you get to know her whole family and stuff. And I think that like she's such a brilliant example of, you don't need the quality, you don't need, she was like really hitting a nostalgic need for the old food that people made, like in the islands, and she was doing the descriptions right.
Yeah.
And also having like very long description of kind of what to expect and what the recipe was. So being able to give someone that whole experience, I think, is so important. And never actually saying subscribe.
Yeah.
People
Right.
just do it.
That's right.
And that's funny enough. I actually tell people to stop saying that because it's gotten to be a little bit of an annoying thing for people. So
Yeah.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point about the quality and the authenticity.
Yes.
You know, we talk a lot about authenticity online. And I think this is really important, especially for people that might have come from a more traditional media background, traditional arts background, where there is a huge emphasis on production quality and certain, like, there's an artistic, you know, angle
Yep.
to everything. And sometimes putting too much production into a YouTube channel or your posts that you're putting online will actually reduce the amount that people can connect
Yep.
to you, right? So if what's her name, Alina?
Leonore.
If she was like had a studio and stuff,
Oh, yeah.
she made like the Azorians watching her may actually feel like she's put
Fake.
on.
Yeah,
fake.
yeah, not connected to it. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, because she's authentically doing it in her, you know, kitchen and it's not probably well lit and the sound isn't as great.
She's
and
complaining about how she doesn't know how to use it.
like they connect with that probably every piece of that, and too slick might even turn them off.
Yeah.
And I see this
Yeah.
over and over again. Is like the level of preciousness around content can actually hurt you. And you know, I've had people come to us and be like, oh, why aren't people, you know, watching in my videos? It's like, well, first of all, you know, everything's shot like you're in news, you know, if you're from the side, nobody's
Right.
talking to the
Direct.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like you have 10 cameras obviously in the room, everybody's made up, and I just feel it's a little cold.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Well, because that's speaking to those people so directly, right?
And here she was just probably talking to 100 people. Like
Yeah. In the
you
initial,
could
yeah.
tell she was very targeted to like just getting some people who probably in Bermuda, the little Azorian community, maybe they'll be interested in this.
Yeah.
And it just expanded. And and there's something about it too that even if you show it, because my parents, you know, people will be over, oh, you got to see this, and people could be in their 80s, and they're showing, and immediately they're like, that's like home. Like she's
Right.
making and it's so interesting to see that spark with something that has no age limit. So you might not have thought that you can get to that level, but she was able to really quick. So I always try to use that as an excuse, as an example of one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I definitely actually want to check that out.
Yeah.
I am not Portuguese, but my parents are Italian, and there's a feeling in that even as you describe it, I'm like, oh, I know that. I know
You're
that
standing right in the
experience.
kitchen with her.
Yeah.
The same as if you were a kid watching her cook. You get that feeling. But
And she's probably making like comments and quips and
Oh, yeah.
jokes that are like very relatable in that
yeah,
too.
and all
It's
the
not-
old sayings and stuff
Yeah.
that you haven't heard in a while. And
Very
cool.
cool.
It's neat.
That's awesome. Speaking of sort of empathy and authenticity, something you said, Tara, really struck me when we were doing the weekend workshop, because for me as an artist for a long while, and still, if I'm being honest, I will sometimes have a kind of adversarial relationship with the idea of marketing or the idea of selling myself, because if I'm in my artistic practice or I've made something that I feel, I feel like there's a nefarious sometimes connotation to like what it is to sell what you've made or to market it, and that's been fading over time, but I've heard that from other artists as well. It's like, and maybe that's also a response. Yeah, I mean, and I think that might also be underneath that might actually be a fear of like not knowing how to do it. Like, so I think if I'm more compassionate with myself, I might say, well, also I probably feel daunted. But something that you said that that really struck me was you talked about something called precision empathy. Where you talked about, I think that's what you called it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I called it.
I don't know. I like precision
Yeah,
empathy.
I was really struck by it. But basically, it was about looking at marketing as an extension of what you're already, like finding your audience as an extension of what you're doing, of understanding people with more focus. It's like you're trying to understand that audience with a kind of laser focus as a means to connect to them. Maybe I don't know. I'm sure that's what you call it. I don't know. That's how it's.
I love the precision empathy, and I will definitely start using it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
But we, I mean, what we really what we practice is more of a, like, I guess what I think about it, the empathy is like in that more the participatory anthropological sort of way. Not that you're just like some scientist observing people, but that you're actually, you join in with the community that you want to connect with. And if you're not already part of it, which is more ideal first and foremost, but you know, a lot of I find a lot of businesses won't do that work, right? They won't even go to a meetup or read blogs or listen to podcasts or do the things that they need to do to really like geek out with their audience. One of the things that I love about you guys, you and Matt, is that like your audience, who we were talking about during the workshop, are cinephiles. Like you guys are cinephiles. You're at TIFF. You're geeking out over like indie directors and like all the media theory words that I don't know how to pronounce. You have those conversations. You can talk about nuances and subtext and all the things in film, alongside your audience who's really interested in that, and you're part of that culture. You came from that culture, and so like you don't actually have to like go and just observe. But there's so many businesses out there that will be like, I'm going to create this product, especially like if we think about for women, right? I'm going to create, it's like, pink it and shrink it, isn't that the whole thing?
Pink it and shrink it.
Oh, and they'll come up with these great marketing slogans, and I know what women want and what women think, but they haven't even spent a second to try to stand in the shoes of their audience, to be part of it. They won't go to women's events, without being there with a booth trying to sell something. Right. And so it's like you need to take off your marketer's hat, and you need to just be part. My book that I wrote many years ago was all about being part of the community you serve. And that's the first thing you do, is you just like hang out and listen and learn and understand first and foremost. And then you start talking.
Well, and what's amazing about that is that in that respect, if you're an independent artist or an artist working on something, you are already tapped in. So you actually are an ideal person to continue telling that story. You're also likely good at telling stories in some medium. Yeah. So it's actually being able to sort of turn it around and look at it as a strength. Yeah.
So here's a good example, I think, for your audience. You want to become a YouTube sensation. You want to grow a YouTube channel. Spend a lot of time watching on YouTube channels. Participate. Comment. Get into discussions, watch everything that you can, understand, and then start a YouTube channel when you're part of that culture. Don't just be like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and then why aren't people watching my channel? No, you need to. And actually one of our clients, you want to talk about Ben a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of our clients, who's in the wealth management business, which is a very high, high acquisition, high value clientele. Like YouTube, you usually think kids and stuff like that, but what he ended up doing is he ended up really paying attention to what's happening on Reddit, what's happening on specific blogs, what people are talking about, commenting and replying to comments and arguing and and being staunchly opinionated about his way of thinking. And it didn't grow overnight. It took a good year, if not a year and a half, for him to start building momentum. But he's now become a superstar in the industry. He's getting so much inbound and so many clients and like and you know, people who, the type of business he gets is, he doesn't talk to you if you don't have 7 figures in investable assets, right?
Right.
And it's like, this is on YouTube, right? And he's building that, and now he's become the one of the biggest podcasters in the industry in Canada, because he's used the leverage.
Started
and
from
knowledge.
zero.
And it started from zero.
Wow.
Zero. And a podcast was zero. There's zero media in it, right? And it's just because he's built this momentum and just keeps going and backs up what he knows, right? And just
But contrast that to some other clients we've worked with who were like, you need to do that. You need to watch other channels. You need to comment on them, and not just like in a robotic, like I'm going in to comment. That
People
was
are
great.
afraid, I think, that it's going to ruin their own artistic vision. Like it's somehow going to affect the, like I was like that for a long time. Like I can't look at other people's products because it may affect the way but you realize that your product ends up so much better when you start looking at it and going, wait, I actually have an opinion.
Right.
I think like in the beginning you don't. And one of my favorite things, I think I mentioned it in a talk, is Reddit. Huge. Like these are communities, super niche, that you can really get in there and drill. Amazon reviews, finding things that associate with the same type of target audience. How, you know, let's say you're in there's certain music that you're playing the same music. What are people actually reviewing? What are they saying they hate about it, and what are they saying they like about it? And so that you know what to create maybe in the future, or what kind of content around whatever you need to create in the future is right there. People are telling you. Same thing with YouTube comments, although those are hard to kind of
sometimes wading through them. But the right kind of channels, it's not going to be a cesspool.
Exactly. Right. And one of my favorite marketers, his name's Simmons. He's actually Nova Scotia. He talks a lot about how to take content that you have that may be in a YouTube video, maybe somewhere else that's long, and how to break it up into like 26 different types of pieces, so that you're not having to recreate stuff. So he'll actually, especially Reddit, he'll look and see what works in Reddit, take a piece of content that he has, and figure out how he can put it back into Reddit in a way that they already tend to comment more, vote more, and he does such a good job. He has such great examples of it. So if there's anyone out there who wants to see how that's done, if you follow Simmons, he's perfect at it.
Cool.
But just being able to, he does that through a lot of work, seeing what people like, what people don't like, and you know, if they like inspirational quotes, he'll give them inspirational quotes, or he'll ask questions around an inspirational quote, let's say, and say his opinion. But I think it really helps you not only become opinionated, which I think is really hard for people to do. I know when I started in growth hacking, I very rarely would write an article, but it was when I felt really strongly about something. So I maybe only wrote 4 or 5 things. But when you look at stuff of like lists of different growth hackers, I'll be on that list because I waited until I didn't just put out content that was like, you know, just trying to fill in the void. I waited until I was steamy, mad about something, or like super excited about something to put it out in the world. And I think, you know, you can comment until that time comes, create your content, create the things that makes you known.
Yeah, well, we're on Matt Campagna's Twitter right now, and everyone knows Matt Campagna has a pretty opinionated Twitter account. No way, right? But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think too, what I hear everyone talking about as well is like engagement, and that word gets tossed around a lot, right? We all hear, even those of us who are not necessarily in like the marketing world, all you ever hear about is engagement. And I think that starts to lose a bit of its meaning, even just hearing it. But there's also, it seems, a big specificity and like a way to engage. I know with Reddit, they can really snuff out quickly if you are not actually authentically a part of that community, right? Like, that's been my experience. And just in observing Reddit, I'm not a big Reddit user, but I have, like, hopped into communities to, like, read and see how people are interacting. And they are...
I'm a super lurker on Reddit.
Yes, that's a good one.
Well, I think that's also the reason why you don't hear about Reddit as much as other ones, because it can't be gamed the way others can be gamed. And I actually literally posted a rant. Wait, it can and it can't, right? At the same time, there's certain groups that can be gamed, but one of the things that and there's less of an algorithm, right? There's less of an algorithm. And, I literally ranted yesterday on LinkedIn because, it's so obvious that so many people are just posting complete crap on the platform just to game, to get into the feed, and they're posting pictures that don't belong to them. Oh, look, this is John Lennon and Yoko Ono from Montreal. I'm like, okay, like, what's the point? Like, what are you giving me, right? Or this is a behind the scenes video of X movie. I'm like, okay, how does this make sense? Why? Yes, it's cool. I get the content's cool, but it's like, what are you giving me? Like, what are you helping me with? What are you giving to the community that makes this content worth it for you to share, right? There's not even an example. You're not even giving me a package of this, right? And all these platforms have been gamed in that way, from Twitter to LinkedIn to Facebook and even YouTube. But Reddit still has that sort of like barrier there, right? And that's why I think it's stayed sort of true over the years, and it's still this underlying front door of the internet that people don't really they can't really game as much.
Yeah, you have to be willing to give your all. Like, I speak about imposter syndrome a lot, and in a lot of cases, people are asking, like, they're raw. They're looking for information about imposter syndrome. They think they have it. If I were to answer, and in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, so I was answering with watch this video, like, or watch this article. But what they're really looking for is me to take the time to write a big post explaining exactly what the video is. And if, let's say, they re-engage, I would show, like, asking, oh, I wish I had more information about that, then saying, you know what, I actually did a video about this, here it is. So it's being willing to just throw your, like, everything out there without any kind of call to action, just to give to the community. And I think that as a marketer,
it's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
But journalists,
because you're always thinking about what are you going to get out of it. I think that's, for me, the big thing that, with engagements and like Reddit, etc., is like, to do it right, you need to listen and like give 75% and like talk and get like 25%. And marketers have a really tough time with that ratio.
99%.
Yeah, because they're like,
take.
Yeah, it's like, what's the ROI kind of thing. Everything has to be like measurable back. That whole, we've even gotten worse into this side of things, like, I'm not saying I want to go back to the brand is everything days, but when we got into like hyper like measuring of everything, everything is like it has to be about efficiency of your dollars. All of a sudden there was no room for the like, what's this department over here that are like participating and talking with people, like what's their ROI kind of problem. And that's the problem with, I think we continue to say engagement's super important. It's not something that you can measure immediately. It's not like immediately tangible, but it is going to be what grows your presence, especially as an artist online. The more you can give, and I'm not just talking about your art, but the more you can give to a community and listen and be part of that, like even just present, even as a super lurker, sometimes you do have to talk because people don't know you're there. But like the more you can give in that way, the more willing they are when you do post that video to support you. Like, hey, I've been working on this thing. If they've never seen you, or all you do is pop in when you need something, people are going to be like, ban constantly. But if you're known to like support other people on the platform, if you're known to give great commentary and share like interesting things. When you do share your own stuff, people are gonna like support it and be way more willing to share it.
Yeah. There's a great example of this. I think it's Violet something on Instagram, and she basically was creating these funny kind of. She's an illustrator, and she started creating these funny dating type images of like dates gone wrong. And she started noticing that in the comments, people were giving their own stories. So she started creating illustrations for those people's situations. Cool. And then she started doing Insta stories where she would kind of text the person who told the story, and she would kind of figure out what happened. So people would be like sharing texts that they got from someone who ghosted them, and like basically texts. It's like text from your ex, and it's just kind of showing the whole story and being like, guys, so this is what happened, what do you think about this, like, and at the end of this whole story that she tells on Insta stories, the end is the illustration she came as a result of this story. So all of a sudden people were not only engaging, giving their own stories, waiting to see if their own stories were heard. Right. She had illustrations, she put them in a book. Right. People bought it immediately, right? Like she was literally listening, hearing what they had, creating based on these, and it's so cool to have seen it, right? I remember when it was just like a really cool idea, I kind of saw it and started following, but to see what she's become and been able to get, hundreds of thousands of followers as a result from just actively listening and giving people exactly what they want.
Very cool. Yeah, that's such a special feeling when that starts happening and you're waiting and then you get chosen. Like it's such that's such a magical moment. But think of that first
moment when she saw people commenting. Sometimes we look at comments and go like, oh, like I got a comment. Right. And then it's so kind of egotistical and you feel really good, and I've done it. Like you're engaging, being like thanks, or like that sounds so awful, and then you kind of put it away. Right. But she had to go that extra step of being like, texting them, DMing them, hearing their story, and being like, oh my gosh, I'll create an illustration for you for free.
And that takes time, and we all know time is the most valuable commodity, right? Yeah. And when you say to people, I have time for you, that is so special.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And to tell an embarrassing story. It's these people were getting rejected. Like it was all about kind of getting rejected by text.
Well, and that also speaks to them feeling like safe enough or comfortable enough to share that with her in that way, which also is like, that means to me that means she must be creating an environment through her posts, or a feeling through her posts that makes people feel like they can do that, which is great. I want to connect this a bit to something you talked about, Tiffany, when it comes to emails, because everyone says, we've heard this a lot if you listen to people in growth or SEO, they talk a lot about how important email lists are, right? Like that's the valuable gold stuff. Like you have that person's email, but it's like what to do with that email, what to do with that communication. And I think to me it's connected a little bit to what you were saying, Tara, around like, not expecting something from people all the time, and how to, you really are building relationships. Like all the things we're talking about really sound like what it is to actually build a community of peers, a community of people that are going to keep associating with one another. So if you could speak a bit about, email addresses and email correspondence.
I think that when you're getting someone's email, it's a gift, first and foremost. It's like, treat it as such. Or like another example that I know someone loves to use is like, this is like a first date, or even right before, like you've met someone and you want to ask them on a first date and they've said yes. Right. Like you are not jumping in. Right. And like
you're not proposing in that first email.
The first email and being like, or not even proposing, it's like, here's the wedding plans.
Right. Yeah, right, exactly.
Like, and that's
our
how
children are gonna be named.
Yeah. It's like, stop being creepy. And it's the same type of creepy where people are just like, you get that same like, what are you doing? Like why did I get into this? And they may forget to unsubscribe, but in their head they've already unsubscribed, really. And so being able to decide, if I'm going to do this email thing, not only am I going to offer, maybe discounts or show people what I've done, but I'm going to tell this story and allow people to just engage with them and maybe give them a little bit of happiness, or just something to change their day or improve it in some way, then it's a completely different thing. And there's certain email lists. I think I talk about. I think I always bring up. It's like, what the fuck happened today?
Right.
Yeah. It's my favorite. And when this guy started, all he was doing was, in the chaos when Trump became president, it was, we don't trust the news. Like, here is 5 or 6 articles that, like, basically the headlines of today. These are 5 trusted articles that you can go to based on trusted sources, that you can get the actual story, and that's it. That was like the main intention of it. He grew to a few 100,000, like, almost overnight, and realized within a couple months he had to quit his job because he couldn't actually do both. Right. So then he, after kind of giving them this great product, he then said, listen, I need $8,500 a month in order to pay my rent, do this, and here's my, is it Patreon?
Yeah,
Patreon. Yeah.
Account. Just please help. Within, he had $15,000 a month. Within,
wow.
He was giving someone something that they wanted. He was constantly offering and constantly asking for feedback, constantly taking that feedback and creating things. Now it's been 3 years, and he has a Slack channel. He has, she sells shirts. He sells whatever. Wow. He has this drive like 3 or 4 times a year, and it's weird because, like, I don't even think twice to give that guy $50 every time he asks for it. Like, it doesn't even, I read it every day. He's giving me a service that I don't have to deal with anything else. And I think that's so important. And he started it just by, let me figure out what the perfect product is first and the perfect email. Listen to people's feedback and constantly say, like, I heard your feedback. I know you guys have been saying this, so I'm trying this out. Being very, cool. He wasn't ever acting like he was an expert. He always had the commentary there, or even on the bottom, he'll find, like, I noticed that you guys have been asking me about this. I'm thinking, right now processing how I'm going to do this. So, like, just keep in mind it's coming up. So always keeping people abreast to his thoughts and future plans. He hired someone and asked other people if they like them. Right. Yeah, so you feel like you know this guy. And so I think that kind of creating that kind of community, because he literally thinks of every email as a gift. And although he probably has, I think he has like at least tens of thousands of contributors now, if I tweet at it or use him in an example, he's right there I feel like I know him because he's been really active and engaging. So I think that's a great example of, think about how you're going to help someone first before you think about selling to them, because if they're interested, it started with 100 people.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like, if we go back to the content, like overproduction thing is, if you he started with something that he felt passionate about, and he learned and he grew with his
and it's
audience.
A text-based email. It is not pretty. Like,
but the thing is, like, he continues to improve upon it, rather than what I see a lot of times, especially for artists, is they'll like go into some hiding to perfect without, like, they're so afraid of showing their flaws, anything like that isn't perfect. And then when they launch, they're like, oh, but like, this is perfect. Well, for you, but you haven't, like, maybe for other people that's perfect is a text-based email that, like, cuts through the noise, or perfect is you being raw and like watching, like, a lot of people love watching other people grow and learn, and because they're themselves. First of all, it makes you accessible. So I know my favorite creators, people that I watch, are like, they have so much humility because I'm like, oh my God, I would have made that exact same mistake, or I have made that exact same mistake, or I'm right now making that exact same mistake. And you just feel something about, like, what they have to say and the advice they give is just more trustworthy on that side, because, like, they are learning along with you. And as the audience, which audiences aren't passive, especially now, like, you do feel like you can give feedback. And you can improve something, or you can get a better experience by, giving that feedback, versus somebody who's perfected something for months.
And when you think of it from a brand's perspective, like, brands can't do this. They cannot. They
No.
have to perfect it, right? And the thing is,
Right.
once you perfect, and then it's like when they launch that thing that's perfect, right? What don't they get back? Feedback.
Right.
Nobody's going to give them feedback
That's
because
right.
they've
They'll close their
it's-
comments.
It's or close comments or anything. Like nobody, like
Yeah.
nobody feels like they want to help, right? Because well, why am I going to help you? Because you've already all set this up.
Oh, you got
and
it.
it's
You
like,
got it. You
The,
don't- you
the
don't
problem,
need any help from
the part I get most frustrated about is like the brands will spend tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that product completely packaged up without real feedback.
Right.
Whereas they could have spent a fraction of that just to get their feet wet and learn and evolve and do what creators who are now have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of followers have done to build that audience. And they can't do that. They have to be, day one, it has to be, 500,000 people have to be exposed to it. And a fraction of those people will like it, will actually sign up. And to them, that's a good ROI. And I think that's bonkers.
Right, yeah. Well, and it's again, what's interesting about what you're saying to me as an artist is that it's actually, the process of making art is what you're describing, right? It is often a roller coaster ride. There's ups, there's downs, it's vulnerable. There's always a process to it, whether you're painting a picture, sculpting something, making a film, rehearsing a theater show, whatever it is. And so I think a lot of times when you study an art form, you are taught that all of that process work happens and then you deliver a product or you deliver, whereas now it's like people actually like to see what that process is. That's fascinating to them. And so any way that we can find a way to let people into that is actually making them more interested in our art, not less. I think like seeing flaws is a thing that now people really want, as you were saying, because they want to feel more comfortable about their own.
I do that too.
Yeah.
There was actually a young woman in your workshop. Why am I forgetting her name? She's a illustrator,
Madeline.
Madeline, yeah. Madeline Patton. I love her story, and what I also love was, so I don't know if she was there for your day too.
I think so, yeah.
But she does these animations. She does this animated series. It takes her years to do this animated series, of course, for YouTube. But what she does in between, she'll record like Twitch style herself animating, and she gets like tons and tons of people watching those. They love watching her like try something, fail at something, go back, because they're all learning while they're doing it, and they get to anticipate this series that's coming out. Animation is very usually behind the scenes and lonely and stuff, but she was talking about how that's like her fans' favorite thing, and it keeps them really interested between these seasons that could be like 3 years apart.
Well, and she's doing it anyway, so it's smart.
Yeah.
It's a smart way to
keep
to
people
have
engaged.
content. That's really great.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, she's wonderful. One tool that I love that you brought up as well, Tiffany, was because I have a lot of time sometimes. Not some, that doesn't make sense. I have a lot of time sometimes. I have a tough time sometimes expressing things around, like, say, Matt and I built this streaming site, and so sometimes just talking to people about it, I would always find this barrier. And you have this great exercise where you're like, letter to your BFF, where like you write to, you write it as though you're writing it to your best friend. And if you have a best friend that's like really honest with you, it's great to send it to them and have them like vet it and be like, I sniff a little bit of, but that was really helpful too, in terms of like, again, that authenticity.
Yeah, there's like the two ways. There's the letter to your BFF, and I put my best friend's email in there. I write the whole thing, and I can usually tell what I sent. And if I don't know, I'll send it, and she'll kind of have a look. But if I wouldn't send it because it's still hokey, I'll go back and like say, and in my head be like, you wouldn't say it like that. And that's where I find I can really figure out what a product is about, or even when I'm, watching myself tell someone about a product. I recently created like a question card product, And as I was explaining it to someone, I realized I didn't really like it the way I was explaining it. And so I started re-explaining it. Oh, I actually am making it this way. And I went home and actually remade it because they seem more interested when I was like, oh, and the other side is also kind of like a letter to yourself of like what the perfect day would be when you're kind of maybe 3 or 4 years in the future. So I'll write what the perfect day looks like, what are the products that are out, like what are my fans saying, or what's the perfect testimonial I'm getting from someone, how are they explaining how they use my product. And I find I get a lot of ideas on not only content, maybe new stuff, but just how I want people to look at my brand someday, and that will stop me from making maybe some dumb decisions in the future that I'm maybe just trying to get money right now. Not thinking
long term. Yeah, cool. Well, I think we're just about to wrap up, but I'd love if you could all give like, what is one thing that you would love people to think about like doing like tomorrow even? Like if you're an artist and you have something you want to share with the world, can you give like what a one thing they could start with? You've given so many great tips and insights, but I don't know if there's one. I like to try and give people like a tidbit of like tomorrow morning when they wake up, what could they, even if it's a change of perspective or something they could do.
Well, go onto Reddit. I think we've already talked about that, but go onto Reddit and spend a lot of time reading. But also, if that's not your bag, like go to meetup.com, see who's meeting up in and around, things that, where's your audience meeting up offline.
Right.
And I know it's sometimes horrific. I know I don't like going to networking events, but just go, and don't go with trying to sell anything. Right. Just like ask people why they're there, what they're interested in, what they got out of the event, that sort of thing. You just start to like listen in person.
Cool. I love that.
I'm always about like sort of don't wait until it's perfect. Just throw it out there and like create. If you're creating content on YouTube and if you want to start on YouTube, like you have a nugget of an idea, throw it out there and start expanding on it. Don't wait till it's perfect. And I'm a person that wants to create sometimes YouTube content, and I don't even listen to that. My barrier is production, but for so many out there that I've met over the years, that it's like for them, shooting out a video is nothing, and it's like, why don't you just talk about your process, or like just talk about what you're dealing with, or all that sort of stuff, so that you start getting that feedback and you start trying to figure that out. Like every single person, every single creator or that we've met over the years have just been people who just like threw stuff out there and just like got a couple 10 views, got 200 views, got 1,000 views, and it's like it wasn't overnight. It took them at least 2 years before they started feeling like, oh, this is something, right? And anybody to go online and expect to go viral within a month, 2 months, 3 months is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
I would say, depending on what you're trying to sell, to go on Google search, put in the first couple words of whatever the thing is that you're trying to sell, and just see what shows up as some of the other related topics, or look on the bottom to related searches and see if there's maybe keywords out there that you can just be creating a page for. And because if you do have a painting that is purple, red, and green, let's say, maybe that could be what people are looking for. Maybe there's a certain motif that people are looking for. So just try to find those really specific things that would describe a product that you sell, and find what's working. If a good tool that I use that's free is Keywords Everywhere, and it's a Chrome plugin that just adds volume to every keyword you look up, so you can always see what the most popular things are. I like to just keep that there, so if I'm searching for something, I can look, and sometimes I find really cool opportunities for new pages there. But yeah, just seeing what other people search for.
Cool. Yeah, and
I
guess
do that in Amazon and Etsy also.
Right, and I guess if any of that sounded foreign to you, then having somebody to work on your website who understands how to do that is also great. Because I know websites and artists are also a thing, right? But learning how to do that, to create those pages, is a really valuable skill. And if that isn't in your wheelhouse, that is a good place to maybe like get somebody to do that.
I got a little extra on that.
Yes.
Is stop living on these platforms. Stop
Right.
building your audiences only on these platforms.
Don't
right?
build your castle on Facebook Island.
Exactly, right? Yes, they've done a good job of enticing us with free reach, but that gets removed very quickly.
Yeah.
Like I just reading an article today how they're saying like since May, Instagram has eliminated so much of the reach, so it's really hard to grow on Instagram the way it used to, right? But the thing is, what's more valuable? It's people coming to your website. It's people coming to your getting your email or giving them giving you their email, right? And yes, the numbers won't be big, but those are the real people that actually want to hear from you,
That's
right?
right,
Yeah, and they're searching for you.
Yeah.
So get
Exactly.
in front of them.
Yeah.
Not on Instagram, with your website, with that page
Yeah.
that has the stuff that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
put your
Always have an owned platform
Yeah.
because these platforms will shift under you and totally mess up your business if that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
and
Or
don't
ta-
pay
or-
influencers all that money.
Yeah, and they'll also steal your ideas.
Yeah.
They'll take your
Yeah.
ideas from you. They'll the platforms will use you as their test bed and
Right.
build their own things based on your content. So you have to just give and take and just use them smartly.
Yeah, that was a huge eye opener for me on the weekend that we did as well. Is the importance of your own
Yeah.
website, because I think in this era of social media being so huge and so prevalent, everyone started to sort of not focus as much as on their
I
own
just
website.
needed Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Make
it's,
money on Etsy.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, but it's so important even just for people to have a place to find you, and for
Yeah.
you to then, if all of these platforms end up, either collapsing and or becoming,
Well,
totally
They're constantly
horrific.
collapsing. I mean, when you look at like YouTube in January this year, they will close the door on underage kids content, non-COPPA compliant content.
Right.
So basically, all those nursery rhyme channels that are making millions of dollars from just doing nursery rhymes, they're going to start making $0.
Wow.
And these are businesses that built themselves off the platform and did not do anything beyond the platform. Right? You have an audience, build it. Great. You build an audience, get them somewhere else.
Get an app,
and
put
you
it
don't
in.
need 1 million. You need
Yeah.
1,000, 100, right? Enough that pays what you need, and then those 100, 1,000 that will sign up and will pay will become your advocates and grow you beyond it, right? So, yeah, it's really tough because the platforms do a good job of sort of enticing us to just keep doing it.
Sure.
Yay,
Yeah, and
it's
it-
so nice here.
it goes back to what we started with, which is your best audience, your best customer is
Yeah.
the one who is
Will
going
pay.
to will
Yeah.
pay and will come to your site and
Yeah.
not
And
just
tell all their friends.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like this full
For-
circle.
Full circle.
Get impressions.
Yes.
Think,
That's right.
deep engagement.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Tiffany, Carlos, and Tara. Yeah, I think that was all great stuff.
I learned stuff.
Stuff again, and I've already
And you were
heard
there.
about all this, and I was
Yeah.
there. If you are interested in more, you can check all of these people out online. You can check all their Twitter accounts out, speaking of platforms, and check out Truly Inc. and check out Flojo. If you have other questions or you are interested in any of these workshops we're talking about or any of the things that we've covered, and you want to reach out to Matt on his Twitter, he will respond because he's very active on there, and he will give you strong opinions
Yes.
on what he thinks.
Yes.
I'm Melissa D'Agostino. It's been a real pleasure to be with you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.